Good evening. Welcome to tonight's On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers. Tonight's show is live, so if you have any questions for our guests during the show, text them to 87778 with the word EDGE, a space, and then your name, location and your message. And we'll try to pick up any that really hit the mark. They're all charged at standard rates, so why not get texting? In tonight's show, I'll be talking with a fascinating guest who will tell us about the extensive research on the subject of the growth and influence of a semi-secretive organisation called Common Purpose. Apparently it has links at the highest levels in every town and city in the UK, and its true but secret agenda may be linked to a future martial law government. Live in the studio, we've got campaigner and former Lieutenant Commander RN Brian Gerrish, who will offer us some very startling revelations. What a show we've got tonight. Brian, welcome.
Good evening.
So, Brian, I know you've been campaigning for quite a while on the subject of common purpose and associated subjects, but I think we need to get a little bit of background. Obviously, you were in the Royal Navy for some time. Could you give us a little bit of...
Yeah, 21 years altogether, and I left in 1993, set up a small business, changed that, got involved in another business, and eventually started to get what I call a bit comfortable.
OK, so far so good.
Yeah. So the business was energy management. We looked after the energy accounts, electricity, gas, water for some large commercial organisations. And that was at a time when I suppose everything to do with the environment was a very big thing. And I believed in global warming, which I don't now.
OK. OK, well, so what went wrong?
Well, eventually, after we'd got comfortable, we started to look at other things. I was working with another ex-Navy guy at the time, and we had the opportunity to try and help the local community around the naval base in Plymouth, where there was a lot of long-term unemployed, especially amongst the younger people. Okay. And we came up with the idea of trying to help them with skills training. Well, we were aiming towards apprenticeships, and the idea was to get them doing basic skills on repair and build of small wooden boats. Okay. We had a lot of enthusiasm from the community, and in fact there were some amazing things started to happen because people in the local community started to talk about HMS Beagle, which took Darwin to sea and was refitted in Devonport before it went. And we discovered that a lot of the local people could actually trace their genealogy to that ship. So we started out with a small idea, but a lot of people said, hey, if it got really big, we could have a go at building a Beagle. And a lot of support from local people. The establishment got on board and was enthusiastic.
By the establishment, you mean what, the local council?
Yeah, Plymouth City Council, South West of England Regional Development Agency, the Government Office of the South West, the Chamber of Commerce. So people were getting very excited because it was what we were told everybody wanted, which is, you know, skills, training and jobs. OK. It was going along exceptionally well. Then we were invited to apply for some grant funding, and it was quite bizarre. Within a couple of weeks, it was like the shutters had come down, so we didn't get the funding, but people we'd been speaking with didn't talk to us. They didn't reply to emails or telephone calls, just like a door closed.
OK, well, why do you think that happened then?
At the time, we'd no idea, but with my colleague Sandy, we decided we would carry on with the project without help from the public sector. So we started to get the project going quite successfully, and then basically we started to be threatened. So there's a story here. If I tell you a little bit about it, it'll lead in. Just stop me. Well, essentially, we got visits from people who suggested that maybe we should let the project go, and if you said why, they said because we're ruffling feathers. But we never got any clear answers. There was some talk that developers wanted the land we were wanted for massive housing development, but we didn't quite understand it. The threats escalated, poisonous emails. Eventually they got to death threats and bricks through windows, arson attempts. And one evening I got a call, and a man said, I've got a friend who'd like to talk to you. I don't
think I'd have attended that meeting personally, but...
Well, it was interesting times, but I went to see him, and he asked about the project, said we were having problems, and I said yes. And he said, what do you think the problem is? And I said, I don't know. And he then said to me, I think the problem's common purpose. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, it's an organisation. And I said, would you tell me about it? And he said, I'd rather not. So I said, well, I've driven here to talk to you. Why won't you talk to me about it? And he said, well, I'd just rather not. I got the impression he was scared. So we chatted about some other subjects. I went home, went on the internet, looked up a site for an organisation called Common Purpose, very different from the present website. And I thought, what is this? Because it was talking about future leaders in society, and I'd never heard of it. So from that point on, we started to dig, and what we discovered in Plymouth was that it was everywhere. Police, hospitals, schools, Chamber of Commerce, but we'd never heard of it. So I'm with colleagues in the Chamber of Commerce who are Common Purpose, but I'd never heard of it.
And they didn't say? There was no way of knowing?
And they didn't say, no.
And how had they become part of Common Purpose, members, if you like?
Well, the correct term, according to Common Purpose, is that they're graduates, but basically they had been selected to do a course, which at that stage was a course called Matrix, which was 48 hours in a secluded environment, a hotel or a small accommodation where people could stay overnight, and then following that, a day a month for a year. And
it was called Matrix. That's rather...
well, it's an interesting title, isn't it?
Yeah,
but what we were really interested in was the fact that it was talking about creating the new leaders. So you say, one, who is Common Purpose to create these people, and what do these new leaders do? And all we knew was we were living in a bit of a nightmare, because there's threats coming in. You're discovering people are members of an organisation they're not declaring, including the police. And you start to get a picture of something working under the surface of society. I'll take it a step further, because eventually a particular gentleman had a good look at the website, and what he found were documents talking about re-engineering a new society, where common purpose leaders would be the people who controlled society. And the bit that we also paid attention to is that they were talking about taking children of the age of 12 to 14 and effectively grooming them to be the new leaders. Now, when I've talked to audiences live now, quite often older people will say, this is what happened in Nazi Germany, Hitler Youth.
Yes, like the Pope. He was a member of Hitler Youth.
Well, he was. I don't know whether he's Common Purpose, but certainly he was a member of Hitler Youth, yeah.
So, presumably, after you realised that possibly you could blame Common Purpose for what had happened to you, and you'd looked into Common Purpose, where did you take it from there? Why didn't you just carry on with your life and...
Well, it's a pretty interesting circumstance when you've had a perfectly good idea to help people and somebody's suppressing it, and also threats and intimidation are used. But I was very lucky because I was with a good group of people who stuck together, and we started to dig. And when we started to dig, we found very interesting things.
Such as?
Well, the key bit is you find a city, which Plymouth was the first one, where you found that people were common purpose in positions of power and influence. And what we started to realise very quickly was that if you had enough people in key positions working for this organisation, then effectively common purpose could control the agenda in a city. And some of the supporting documentation that a colleague of mine, well qualified, read, said absolutely that, how to control your host city. So we began to get a picture that there was I'll call it a quasi-political organisation controlling a city by pulling the levers of key people in positions of power and influence.
So somehow they had got the buy-in of these people who were already in positions of power, is that what you're saying?
Well, those people had been given common purpose courses,